Welcome everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you for joining me. This is Glam Metal Gems, episode number 1, and it's where we're going to take a deeper look into the genre itself, at the bands and albums that slipped through the cracks, shining a new light on these lost gems and hopefully bringing them to a wider audience. But before we do all that, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video or know someone that would, please share it, help get the word out on social media. I would also appreciate that. And of course, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music, just like this with Glam Metal Gems, episode number 1. And kicking things off, I've got 5 of these to go through with you. And the first one here is Rock's Gang, Things You've Never Done Before from 1988, debut studio album by them. It was produced by Beau Hill, who had worked with Rat, Warrant, Winger, Kicks. So, big guy within the production industry, certainly brought a lot of great attention to detail in the production of this. The band themselves actually formed in 1982 in St. Petersburg, Florida, back where I'm from. And if you want a definition of glam metal, I think these guys were really it. They had the big hair, the makeup, sleazy hard rock, all about sex and drugs, and just big sound and production from Beau Hill on this one here. They had several radio hits off of the album, Scratch My Back, No Easy Way Out, and Red Rose. So you might recognize some of those if you can check them out. The album did perform respectably well. It sold 250,000 copies, 250,000, and the band remained active all the way into the 2000s, eventually though morphing into their alter ego, the Mojo Gurus, which is an acoustic rockabilly version of the band itself. So if you did like the band, there's this other version of it. And they eventually signed a major label deal in 2005 with Universal Records and recorded their second studio album with them, this time with Jack Douglas producing, from Aerosmith fame. And the Mojo Gurus are still active and out there today. So you can, still find Kevin Steele, the lead vocalist, and see what he's doing. Okay, the next one up that I want to talk about, Dirty Looks, Cool from the Wire, 1988, fourth studio album. But it was the first major label released by these guys. They had 3 other albums before this on an independent label. This was produced by Max Norman, who had worked with Lynch Mob and Megadeth fame. And the band themselves, they formed in 1984. They are a U.S. band, or I should say were a U.S. band, with a Danish singer, and they owe a lot to AC/DC, both in terms of the vocals and the dirty hard rock sound that they are. The album was quite well received at the time. They got a lot of MTV airplay out of the song Oh Ruby. You can check that one out. And another one on here, It's Not the Way You Rock, which appeared in the movie Johnny Be Good. It's an interesting movie, had Anthony Michael Hall and Uma Thurman in it. Judas Priest was on the soundtrack. So, again, some of these things you might recognize just because they were around at the time. And the band continued right up until 2011, when lead vocalist Henrik Ostergaard died from liver failure at the age of 47. But over the years, the band, their guitar player, Paul Liddell, had played with the Dangerous Toys. And so in 2019, it was announced that the band would reunite with Jason McMaster, the frontman of Dangerous Toys, on vocals now for Dirty Looks, along with Paul Liddell on guitars. They would now play under the name, though, Dirty Looks As Close As It Gets, of course, because Henrik isn't part of it. And so far, they've just announced a few dates and played a few live things here and there, but I hope it turns into a bit more. Okay, next up, Vayne, No Respect, 1989, debut studio album. California band that formed in 1986. Lead vocalist Davey Vayne originally started as a record producer. He produced Death Angel, the thrash band from the Bay Area, their album Ultraviolence in 1986. So cool little tie-in there if you're a thrash fan. And this album here was produced by Paul Northfield, who had worked with Dream Theater, Queensryche, and Rush, although they're not really in that vein. The album is, in my opinion, one of the greatest of the era and hugely overlooked, perfectly capturing that gritty vibe to the hard rock scene and the excess and over-the-top nature of it all. Unfortunately, the album just didn't do very much, and despite recording a second album with their label that went unreleased for a number of years, I mean decades even, they were eventually dropped by the label, I believe in 1990, around that time. And so Davey Vayne, the lead vocalist, formed a short-lived supergroup called Road Crew in 1990, and it featured ex-GNR drummer Steven Adler in the lineup. And they did record an album, but unfortunately due to Adler's drug addiction and problems at the time, the album has gone unreleased. So later Davey reforms Vayne, and they're still going today. In my opinion, each of their releases just super high quality like the original, and the last two albums definitely worth checking out. Enough Rope from 2011 and Rolling with the Punches in 2017. So if you're looking for more Vayne, check those out. Next one we've got here, Cats and Boots, Kicked and Clawed, 1989 debut studio album, formed in 1987, and their little niche in the world of music was that they were a half American, half Japanese band and featured vocalist Joe Ellis. And the album itself was produced by Mark Opitz, who'd worked with AC/DC and then NXS, and a heavy blues rock mix with a dirty glam metal vibe to it, revved up, totally turned up to 11 on here. Lead single Shotgun Sally did pretty well. Great track to check out by them if you don't know them. The album eventually went gold, selling 500,000 units in the US. Unfortunately, things just didn't really seem to go their way, and they kind of lost momentum and ultimately fell apart. Joe Ellis would go on to form the short-lived supergroup Heavy Bones, along with Gary Hoey on guitar, Frankie Banali on drums, of course from Quiet Riot, and Rex Tennyson on bass. And they did record one excellent self-titled album that came out in 1992. And Joe Ellis has recently returned to the music industry in 2019, right before COVID slowed everything down. So we should keep our eye out for him, as we may see more from him in the future. Okay, and the fifth and final one I want to talk about, Juliette from 1990 debut studio album, formed in Florida in 1985, and initially worked very closely with Kevin DuBrow from Quiet Riot. He even produced their demo Passion, which you can see there behind me. But their debut album, this one here, the self-titled one, would ultimately be produced by another famous musician, Frankie Sullivan, the guitarist for Survivor. And their lead single, Revvin' Me Up, received substantial airplay at the time, and ultimately the album itself would eventually sell over 300,000 copies, so it did fairly well. But the band just didn't last very long and quickly fell apart as the music industry began to shift in 1991. Lead vocalist Kenny McGee moved back to Tampa, Florida, and he joined the local band there, Heartless, and then over the next few years released new music with Heartless as well as solo. He eventually became a semi-pro wrestler, as that whole market is down there in the Tampa area. He would eventually release a country album even, and he's still kicking around this day down there playing live shows and stuff like that. So a lot of these guys are still around doing things. You can check them out. They made great albums back in the day that unfortunately just slipped through the cracks. And so there you go, Glam Metal Gems, episode number 1. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Hope everyone has a great day, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everyone.